Happy 4th of July. This is Independence Day here in 2022, coming to you from the Welch family homestead. This is Jeff. This is not an easy one, but it's a good one. I haven't been posting as many videos to my YouTube channel the last few weeks because I've been busy here trying to get the farm set up, working on my business as well internationally. And yes, I can hear my chickens in the background, and you can too, but happy 4th of July. But what does Independence Day mean? What does it represent? To some people, it doesn't click. It doesn't even trigger anything in their mind of what it actually means other than partying on a boat or partying at someone's home or drinking. That's not my life, and I'm proud of that. But at the same time, I'm not here to judge anyone. But what does Independence Day really mean? Why do we celebrate 4th of July? It is the independence of our country, becoming a country, becoming independent from the other countries on the other side of the big pond we call the Atlantic Ocean that tried to control us, to control our country, to control our future. We're less than 250 years old. We're almost 250 years old, but not there yet. We're a very young experiment. And this experiment has had its challenges. No doubt about it. No doubt about it. It's had its challenges. I love my country. I'm a true patriot in the sense of I would die for my country. I would give my life for my country, just like I'd give my life for one of my children or my grandchildren or my family, because to me, the United States of America is the republic for which I stand, not kneel, but stand. I believe in what this freedom has stood for. I believe the freedom of speech is a very important part of that, and I'm expressing that here on my YouTube channel. I believe the fact that I've been embedded into that concept of why it's important for everyone to see the things that are going on in the world right now. The food shortages are just one thing. The prices of food and the things of necessity going up extremely fast at a record pace than we've ever seen in history is a very concerning thing. There's a great reset taking place right now, and that reset is, in my opinion, in very much at a very high level globally, has been challenging for many years, many decades here in the United States, our Constitution and our Bill of Rights and our Declaration of Independence. The Declaration of Independence basically describes our independence as a country. And how do we get that? Well, we fought our way through that. Many people want to debate the Second Amendment, and the Second Amendment is the right to bear arms, to become that militia that needs to stand up if it needs to stand up. It has nothing to do with hunting. It has to do with the fact that we have that freedom to bear arms so that we can protect this country. And some of you don't realize that even during the time we were in the World War, any other wars, we didn't have the wars going on here on our land other than the Pearl Harbor situation when the Japanese bombed Pearl Harbor, when the Japanese bombed Pearl Harbor, let me get that out, during the World War. Now, when they bombed Pearl Harbor, they didn't put their men on the ground. They did it all from the air. They knew they would be better off not to do that. Why? Because many people out here that's listening to me from around the world, we, the United States, have the right to bear arms. We have the right to own our own guns, and I own my own as well. We are the most armed militia in the world as citizens of this country called the United States. It's the largest army in the world. Outside of our military, we, the people, are the largest armed force in the world, and they want to challenge that. They want to challenge that because they know if they can challenge that, they can challenge other freedoms as well. If they can unarm the citizens of the United States. Now, I'm not here to debate that. I'm just bringing that point forward here because we are in a time when our independence right now in history is being challenged to a great extent. But it goes beyond that. It goes into the monetary system. The monetary system has been up for grabs since 150 years ago. I'm going to give you a quick nutshell and ask you to study this, ask you to look into it as much as possible. I'm not here as a prepper. I'm not here as a conspiracist. I'm here as a history buff. I love history. I've studied history all my life. We're not teaching history adequately and accurately enough in our school systems, as we should. We're not teaching a lot of things in our school systems as we should. I encourage everyone from that homesteader point of view, not a conspiracist point of view, not from an erratic person's point of view, but from a person who actually is educated and a person who is actually very well versed in history and very well versed in government and very well versed in law. I can tell you that it's important, in my opinion, for you to control, as a parent, control the education that your children receive. That it's education, not programming. And I'm being very blunt here on this video that I'm doing on the channel today here at Welch Family Homestead. And I'm doing it for a purpose because it's all centered around our independence and our freedoms. Because our independence is not independence without our freedoms. It's one thing to say we need to be independent from other countries controlling us. It's another thing to say we need to be independent, that our own government should not control us. Because all of our paperwork, our Constitution, our Bill of Rights, our Declaration of Independence, everything that we have that we hold dear here, that established our country as solid as it is and structured it as a republic as solid as it is, of a constitution of states. States. It's called the United States of America. It's not called America. It's called the United States of America. We want to abbreviate it and call USA. That's fine. You can call it USA. USA, though, stands for United States of America. That doesn't mean that every state has to agree with other states. That means that every state has its voice separately to control their states independently, not be controlled by the federal government, how to control their own state. But each state has the ability to govern its own people, and every state has its ability to voice its way into Congress. Some of us here in the public of the United States are not really well versed on the way that our country is set up. We have different levels of government. We have our local government, which could start out with a municipality. It could be multiple municipalities within a certain county of a certain state. Counties, states are broken down into counties. Counties then have the municipality and the government structure of that county. And then each county can have one or more municipalities, which we call towns or cities, provinces, or what have you, that are based within each county. And all those people that are in those different counties are then split up into lines, which we call districts or regions within each state. And those districts have the ability to vote within those districts of who they would have represent them, not only in the state, but also in federal levels, which would be Congress, and also eventually the president as well, and the vice president during those elections. So let's break that down. Say it's the state of Georgia. The state of Georgia has mayors, city council members in different municipalities, but they would also have commissioners or commission boards within counties. And then you have state representatives that are elected within districts within that state. I'm in North Carolina, so I'm picking on Georgia here for a moment. Every state has it done differently, but very similar to what I'm explaining here. And each state would elect state representatives and state senators to represent state legislative decisions. And the legislative decisions are done when the legislature meets at those state capitals and have those decisions that are placed before them that are then brought up before votes. Many times those votes are the enactment or the endorsement of votes that have taken place locally within certain municipalities within those states that the state legislature either endorses or denies that ability to take place. It could be liquor license. It could be an extra tax on the homeowners or landowners within a certain county or municipality to handle certain issues that are financially burdens of that particular municipality or that county. A lot of different reasons that things can come up before votes. Every state works differently. Again, they're not all the same. So anyway, that's local government. That's within the state, or it's within a county or within a municipality. Then it goes further. Each of those districts also have the ability to elect a U.S. representative, a United States representative. Georgia does, North Carolina does, California does. Every state in the United States has the ability to elect U.S. representatives and U.S. senators to represent them in Congress from that state for the best interest of the United States as a whole, in how that could also affect the people of their state and to be a voice from their states. That's how that works. Now, if there were ever be a time where a convention of states were to override Congress, only one vote of those Congress members that represent each state would be allowed to vote. Not all those Congress members, not all those U.S. senators, not all those U.S. representatives would be allowed to vote for each of those states. We haven't seen that in my lifetime, but it could happen. And we may even be seeing that soon if everything keeps going in the direction that it's going. We're in one of those times that is a very rare moment in history here in the United States where a lot of things are not managed correctly. We all see that. I'm not here to throw stones toward any particular party. You're hearing me say that as well. In my opinion, there's people on both sides of the aisle that need to be governing better than they do. So let me make that clear. I'm not here to bash any particular party. I'm here to speak the truth. And here I'm trying to give you a little bit of education in regards, if you don't understand it already. Many of you do. I'm not here to talk down to you, but there's many people going to hear this video that do not understand the way that government works here in the United States. So in this wonderful, beautiful day of celebrating our independence, it has been challenged for many years. And one of the ways it's been challenged, and I want to spark your moment here of your mental studying of our government, and realize that we have gone through some major changes in what I call several resets in history. We're celebrating today our 1776 celebration of our Declaration of Independence from England and from anyone else. We became a country, but it became a country not all the way from East Coast to West Coast like we call it today. We didn't have that big of a country at that time. We were mainly the 13 colonies, mostly the territory here on the eastern border of the United States. And still today, consequently, the majority of our population in the United States, even if you think about what I'm about to say is wrong, it's not. You can check this out. The overwhelming majority of the population of the United States is east of the Mississippi River, still within that area of our country which began our country. And later on, about 100 years later, there were changes that took place, a little over 100 years later. Lincoln was in office, President Lincoln, our 12th president. And we had a war here on our own land where we lost millions of our own people killing each other in a war called the Civil War. In the Civil War, you had, before the Civil War, there's two monetary tenders, currencies. You had the Union dollar and you had the Confederate dollar in the South. The South had a lot of industry. They had the cotton industry. Some people want to bring up slavery. Okay, I'm going to give you a quick history there, very quick. I'm trying to move very fast here on this video because I want you to hear these bullet points that are very important. Some want to criticize the United States for slavery. Let me make a quick point here. The original settlers that came here with slaves and brought more slaves. And less than 1% of the population here owned slaves. 99 point whatever did not own slaves. The majority of the people who came here were not slave owners. So let's make that very clear. Let's not create a judgment on the United States based on a narrative. Number two, I want to make a point about this. They came from a country that had slaves. And they came to the New World here in the United States with the slaves and brought more. We were not the only country at that time that had slaves. Slaves were all over the world. In fact, today, here in 2022, there are more slaves than there ever has been in the history of mankind. Still today, in certain countries, there's slaves. I'm not saying that slavery is correct. It's not. In fact, I would like to say, put a blue ribbon on the United States because it was the first country ever in the world at the level of democracy that it was living within that actually stood up and did what needed to be done to annihilate and eradicate slavery. And other countries, after the U.S. did it, followed suit. We were the ones who set that precedence. We were not the ones who created it. The United States did not create slavery. The slaves were being shipped into South America. They were being shipped into Europe. They were being shipped into other parts of the world from Africa by European countries prior to the U.S. even being existent. So keep in mind that real history is what real history should be, and it's what I'm speaking right now. So the people who came here didn't come here to create slavery, or they, again, no matter what narrative you're listening to, did not come here and create slavery. So they didn't come here to create it, and they didn't come here and create it. It was already created. And it took almost 100 years of the existence of the United States being a country after we established this country in 1776, which we celebrate today. Almost 100 years later, slavery was completely eradicated and other countries followed the suit. So we were the country who broke that mold. We were not the country who created it. We were a country that was created from people of which 1% or less did own slaves from where they came from and brought more slaves over. The cotton industry was huge. It didn't only supply the United States with cotton, which was a very important piece of material. If you don't believe it's a very important piece of material, try wearing wool underwear. It's not very comfortable, I guarantee it. Cotton is much more comfortable. But before the cotton gin came around, it took a lot of hands to separate cotton from the seeds of the cotton. A lot of hands, very hard on the hands. In fact, my relatives were also involved in picking cotton shoulder to shoulder with many of the slaves. So it wasn't just slaves, it was sharecroppers and also very poor people coming from Europe that looked for a new opportunity here in the New World. So again, 99-point-something% did not own slaves, and the slaves that did live here, there was a percentage of them, I'm sure, that went through things that was not pleasant. There was a lot of them that didn't go through things that were unpleasant either. It doesn't mean that slavery, even if it wasn't pleasant or was pleasant, was the right thing, and it has gone away. Now, saying all that, I put a blue ribbon on the United States of being the country that set the precedence that gave the rest of the world the example of eradicating slavery when it was a country that didn't create slavery, but it was a country that was created by people who came from other countries that had slavery. Okay, let's make that point. Now, next point I'd like to make. During that same time, the reason I bring up the Civil War wasn't just about slavery, it was about many other things. Our currency was one of them. After the war took place and the Union beat the Confederate dollar went to zero. The Union dollar was then the U.S. dollar. But the North was broke after the war. But it didn't stop them from moving forward with the Louisiana Purchase. And Lincoln was the same president that also moved forward with the Louisiana Purchase, where they purchased from France the Central Plains area of the United States, between Louisiana all the way up through the plains, all the way to the north. It was a large purchase of the Central Plains of the United States, where a lot of our farmland is located still today. And that is a lot of our farmland. A lot of our farmland is that Central Plains of what we call the Louisiana Purchase, which was, obviously, it took place during the time that Lincoln was president. Now let's look beyond that. We have history of the Indian Wars, where these same armies, same cavalries, same militias that were created within that northern region, they kept moving west, and there were hundreds of wars against a lot of the Native Americans. During that Civil War period, right prior to that, if you recall, that was when we were going through the currency transition of what do we back our currency up with once it has been transitioned over, and the Confederate dollar then would go away and that would obviously have been gold. We backed our dollar up with gold. One of the things that was done as a precursor to the Civil War was the Trail of Tears, where the American Indians, called the Cherokee here on the east, were marched. Many of them died on that march, where they marched them out of Georgia, out of North Carolina, out of South Carolina, out of Tennessee, out of the area that they dominated, which was very rich in gold. In fact, Dahlonega, Georgia is my hometown that I grew up in. Dahlonega means yellow rock in Cherokee language. And the reason is because that was a very rich area of gold. And that gold is very pure. It's like 99.9998% coming straight out of the ground. It's the most purest gold in the world. And it was the area and the location in Dahlonega, Georgia, where the first major gold rush was in the United States. When the Civil War took place, all those who were fighting in the Civil War and demanding upon people during the Civil War, a lot of people came from the north, different parts of the United States to work the gold mines in North Georgia. They were forced out, or they were forced to fight. They had to choose to fight in the Civil War, or they had to escape out of that zone and move away. And that's when the gold rushes started taking place in Colorado and in California and Alaska, because they had to find other areas where they would do their gold business and mine for gold and pan for gold. And that's what happened. That's why the gold rush moved west, and that's the history behind that. The Trail of Tears took place because the Indians, we call the Indians, the Native Americans, Cherokee, controlled the area where the gold was most prominent in the United States at that time. So General Winfield Scott was the one who was over that regiment and all the regiments in regards to moving all the Cherokee Indians out of this area so that they would not be controlling that area, and the gold mines could then make gold coins for the U.S. The U.S. Gold Mint that was located in Dahlonega, that particular mint is Memorial Hall at the University of North Georgia. Today is called Memorial Hall, and there was a beautiful $10 gold pieces made right there in Dahlonega, Georgia, among other coins as well. They're worth a lot of money now. If you have one, it's a collector's item. So moving quickly as I move through this, why am I bringing all this up? Because the U.S. dollar was then backed with gold after all this took place. But the U.S. itself went through a lot of debt through that war process. And then after the war, they kept moving forward. Where'd they get that money? That's what you need to ask yourself. That's when we went back from our freedoms that we had had for 100 years. We reversed some of those freedoms with our monetary system as that moved into a currency that was then in debt to the Rothschilds and others that many of you talk about, and some of you might call that conspiracy, but you can actually look at some of the documentation in regards to that. And that same group of people, along with other names that are very prominent in history, developed the Federal Reserve that took place in the early 1900s, around 1912, 1913. It was initiated. Why did that get initiated? Only a couple of decades after the Civil War, is because of exactly what I just told you. Everything was being planned ahead for, including the backing of the dollar with gold. And the dollar was backed with gold through the Federal Reserve. Federal Reserve, by the way, is not owned by the United States, never has been. It's always been controlled by the Rothschilds and others within that board. It has never been part of the United States. It is part of the central banking system, not part of the U.S. The U.S. Treasury now is part of the United States. The U.S. owns its printing press, but it does not own the Federal Reserve. Those people at the Federal Reserve that control the interest rates, control the funds, control the monies that is allowed to be printed is not the United States, never has been, and it still isn't today. Many of you did not know that. Now you know that. You can Google it, check it out, research it, you'll find out. So when you talk about the Federal Reserve, it is not the U.S. Now let's shoot forward almost another 100 years. When Nixon was in office, President Richard Nixon, he did two things that was very prominent during his stay in office, even though he was impeached and he did not complete his presidency. And Gerald Ford finished his presidency up because he was the vice president. Actually, President Nixon was impeached for Watergate issues. If you want to look that up as well, you can. I'll try to load up some links so you can do some research here. but you're welcome to do so. We were backed by gold. Our U.S. dollar was backed by gold. It was controlled by the Federal Reserve, but it was printed in the U.S. Treasury, U.S. Treasury being part of the United States, Federal Reserve not being part of the United States, because it's a central bank system. It communicates with all the other currencies and exchanges with all the other currencies around the world. When Nixon was in office, the two things he did, you can write this down, make note of it. Again, Google it. Again, research it. Two things he did is he released the gold on the open market. Prior to that point, if you had a substantial amount of gold, you had to turn it into the government. The government would turn it into bars, what have you, and they would own that gold. You had the right to have note against it. In other words, you had a certificate that gave you the knowledge that that was your gold, but the government held it to back up the gold, or to back up the U.S. dollar, because the U.S. dollar was backed up by the gold. You were not allowed to hold your gold. If you had any substantial amount of gold at all, you had to turn it into the government. The government would give you a certificate saying this was your gold, but they used your gold to back up the U.S. dollar. And that's when, until that point, the dollar would either have a silver certificate or it would have a reserve note written across it. Okay, so now, and it was a gold note. It was a note that was basically backed up by gold. It was secured. Its value was secured by gold. When Nixon released the gold on the open market, he eradicated that. He canceled that out. That was one of the major resets that took place, was when Nixon was in office. I was a teenager during those years, but this is part of your history. The second thing he did is, with a communist country, China, he opened up trade with China for the first time. The United States then opened up trade with China during Nixon's administration, as well as canceling gold backing up our dollar. Now, during that transition of gold backing up our dollar, we shifted over from a gold standard to a petroleum standard. Our dollar was still backed, but it was backed a different way. Our dollar was then backed by petroleum sales. We made agreements with Saudi Arabia, the United States did, to back our dollar up along with the Federal Reserve. All this worked together so that every barrel of oil, as it's being sold through the Saudis, regardless of where it was being sold through the world, it was being sold and transacted through that transaction with the U.S. dollar. It was not traded with gold backing it up. It was traded in the sense that every barrel of oil was sold with the U.S. dollar. As the U.S. dollar here in the United States would gain strength or lose strength, the rest of the world then was banked against the U.S. dollar. So we were compared against the U.S. No matter where we're at in the world, no matter what country you're in, your dollar was then seeing the U.S. dollar as its gold standard. Like it or not, this is the way the world has been working for many years, all these transitions, and it affects our freedom and our independence, because the whole world affects us in a weird way now. And now we're going through another transition. Our current administration here has, along with the Federal Reserve, pushed trillions of dollars in addition to what we already have in our banking system. Only about 12%, 8 to 18%, actually around 18% total, is printed money, dollar bills, whether it's a $1 bill, $5 bill, $10 bill, $20 bill, $50 bill, $100 bill, whatever, and coins. About 18% is printed. The rest of it has been digital for many years now. Example, if you're getting a loan at the bank and you're buying a house, they're not moving hundreds of thousands of dollars in that purchase of dollar bills. They're moving digital numbers in computers that is registering and the amounts of monies that is moving from one account to another, and it's staying within that software system. And within that software system, that is the central banking system, that is the U.S. Treasury in cooperation with the Federal Reserve, where about 82% of that is all just digital numbers. So everybody wants to talk about the digital currency world today. We've been in digital currency for a long time in a different way, managed by the Federal Reserve. The Federal Reserve just recently, over the last few weeks, has announced the CBDC, which is the central banking digital currency that they're going to be implementing next year. They said that the servers will go online in February 2023. And when that does, they're initiating a new digital currency within the United States. Again, another major reset. Does it mean it's going to change a lot of things? I'm not here to tell you what it's going to change, how it's going to change. I'm not here to predict. I'm not here to be prophetic. I'm not here to do anything like that. But I am telling you this. With the inflation that we're experiencing right now, and with the amount of the trillions of dollars that has been added on to our currency that has helped add more into inflation, plus our independence on oil now has become dependence because of decisions by our government to cause us to be more dependent upon others for our oil instead of us producing ourselves, which we have that ability to do. Regardless of what's happening, all of it is working together to cause inflation to skyrocket. If you go to the grocery store, groceries are 2-3 times as high as they should be right now, and they don't have to be, but they are. And it's going to get even worse because these prices have gone up due to increases in petroleum, increases in diesel, increases in cost of grain. I'm not going to sit here and blame Russia or blame Ukraine. I can tell you that the United States is much too powerful of a country to get up and to actually admit or even to be believed when they do say something like that. To assume that we would believe that a country like Russia and the Ukraine can control our economy or control Europe's economy is kind of naive for us to even go in that direction. That's my opinion, because we can survive with or without Russia and Ukraine's ability to curve our economy. It was already been curved prior to that. And because of that, one thing you haven't seen yet, and it's going to hit probably in September, October, November, you're going to see meat go up enormously because of the cost of the grain and the cost of other sources of food has gone up tremendously. And that harvest hasn't taken place yet. Your grocery bills are high now, but they're not near as high as what they're going to be seen later on in the fall and into the winter. And that's why it's important. That's why I've been saying very strongly, just like we are right here at Welch Family Homestead, you need to do everything you possibly can to understand that food is your next currency that's going to matter to you. You need to grow your food, be independent. This is Independence Day. Let's celebrate Independence Day with decisions that are going to be good for you and your family, even if it's on a small scale that you can scale up over the next 2 years. Everyone can grow enough food to survive, and everyone can grow enough food to help others around them survive. And we can be a big part of that to put a dent in the scenario that is around us. So our independence today and our independence tomorrow might be described a little differently, but it's going to evolve. It's always going to evolve. And it's also going to have some resets in it in regards to what matters in our lives. But the true independence that we have is, yes, at risk. It has been at risk for the last 200, almost 250 years. I don't know if you've seen that lightning behind me, but I've got some massive clouds, beautiful clouds. Sun is setting and it's adding some color around us here at Welch Family Homestead. And I just seen a flash behind me. And so we'll see that in the video here when it's posted. I want you to take it serious in a sense of realizing these changes that are taking place. Will times get better? I think it's going to take a while for times to get better, but it's going to get a lot worse before it gets better. Are you ready for it? And if you're not ready, I want you to stay with me on this channel as we start educating people more and more about not just how to plant a seed and watch it grow into an ear of corn, not just how to watch a baby calf get born or birthed, not just know how to raise sheep, not just know how to manage your pastures, not just know how to manage your farm, but to go further than that and also understand why. It's not enough just to tell a baby, don't touch that eye. You have to tell that baby, don't touch that hot eye because you're going to get burnt. Let me explain what it means to get burnt. And have that educational communication with that child so that they understand you're not just telling them not to do something. You're protecting them from doing something that can harm them and hurt them. So as our communication comes across this channel, I want it not just to be communication, but I want it to be communication that doesn't just tell you what to do, but tells you why, that it's important to do it, and why it's important to do everything possible to protect your tomorrow and your independence. Happy Independence Day to everyone who's listening to me. God bless you. God bless America. And let's all remember that we're all in this together. It's not about blame. It's not about a fight toward each other or one another. It's about one thing, and that's for us to come together. Our greatest defense is for us not to bark and bite at each other, but to figure out how we can work together to protect this great experiment called the United States of America, the republic for which we stand. One nation, indivisible, under God, with liberty and justice for all. And I'm paraphrasing several things to say what I just said in salutation. This is a great country, and I will say this, anyone listening from anywhere else in the world, your freedoms, your securities highly rest on the healthiness and the security of our own nation here in the United States, because we want to protect from our country the democracy and the freedoms of countries around the world. And if we go down, it puts a lot of other countries at risk as well. The United States needs to stay strong, and the stronger that we become, the better the world is. And I don't mean that in a dictatorship way. I mean that in a brotherhood and sisterhood way, that we should all do everything possible here in the United States, if you're a citizen of the United States, to protect our freedoms and to protect our independence, protect our we the people, where our government doesn't control us, but we are the ones who should be controlling our government. That is the way we're established. We do not ever let ourselves get to the point where we allow the government to control us, but we control our government. That's the way we're set up as a republic. In regards to that, it also is a balance. We're not here to fight our government, but we're here to vote. And our vote should count. And our vote is sacred. And I pray to God that we do everything possible, that our government and our officials do everything possible, that our military and our marshals do everything possible to make sure that our voting here in the United States is as sacred as it should be and protected, because the voice of the people is the ultimate step of freedom in the power of the people. Our voice rests within our vote. Our vote is important. Again, it's lightning behind me. I'm going to get inside. I had no idea I was going to have a lightning storm behind me as I was going to do this video. But I thought I was going to have maybe a beautiful sunset and a lot of beautiful clouds hitting me behind me. But instead, we have this storm rolling in. God bless you. Pray for our country. Put God first. I truly believe that if we get to the place here in this country where we put God first, again, that we hold our beliefs sacred, the rest of it can fall into place the way it should. God bless you from Welch Family Homestead, and may you go through this Independence Day being thankful for the blessings of living here. If you live here in this country, it's one of the greatest places on earth to have the blessings to live here. And my family has been here since the 13 colonies that were established in the beginning. And we were not the wealthy. We were not the slave owners. Our family worked shoulder to shoulder with the slaves to share a crop and do what needed to be done to feed their family and work their way up from the dirt. That's why we love this country so much, is because we have invested in it from the beginning. And we hope that this experiment lasts for another 250 years. God bless you.